Hello everybody, and welcome to February's Kit of the Month. Today we are going to be painting something inspired by these beautiful florals arrangements from Frances Palmer. I was really inspired by her these last couple months reading her book. She's a ceramicist, but she also has like a beautiful garden that she creates these visuals to kind of display her ceramics. But anyway, so kind of fluffy florals. We're going to be mixing a peony in with a dogwood grouping and also some lilacs. Okay, so this should be in your email that you received, all these. So if you want to have them in front of you, you can print them out or have them on some kind of iPad or something as a visual. So I'm just going to set it in front of me. Here I have my palette I'm working with. I also have a mixing palette to the side that I like to use. The colors that we'll be using today are some pinks. We'll be using purples, yellow. We'll be using a gray for the dogwoods to create like a white, because when you're painting white flowers on white, I use gray to create shadow. Otherwise, you don't see the flowers at all. And we'll also be using more of a celadon green. Okay, so I'm having a 11 by 14 cold press paper here that I have taped down with artist tape. If you want to paint smaller, you can, but we are going to be painting horizontally today. So I've just gone ahead and done a quick sketch of the bottom of a vase here that I'm just going to be using, because what we're going to be doing is painting this really basic vase and then having flowers kind of coming out of it. Okay. So you can use a pencil or you can just use your brush. The two brushes that we will be using today are a rounded brush. So this is a number 8. If you have something within this, the number, it's a round brush. 8 if you have a 6 or a 10, depending on how large you're painting. If you're painting any smaller than this, I say like a 6 is good, even a 4 if you have. But for a detail brush, you want a 2 or a 3, so to have both. If you only have one today, it's better that you have the larger one, because that way you can paint more surface area with it. But you can use the very tip of your brush to create a lot of the detail work that we would use with this round, smaller brush here. So just work with what you have, also with the colors that you have, and we'll try to, create something beautiful. Well, we will create something beautiful together. Okay, so just wetting my brush into my water cup here. What I want to do is I want to make my vase like a light blue. So I like to swatch it so you guys can see. So I'm going to add more water to it just to make it lighter. Okay. So I'm going to use this color, light blue. If you have something similar, or if you want to make your vase like say gold or something, you can do that as well. So if you're just painting freehand, which this is a pretty simple design that you can do that, you create more of like a half circle. You don't have to make it perfect, because it's actually more pleasing to the eye that it's not symmetrical. And then what you want to do is just load your brush back up and create 2 other half circles coming down like this, and another kind of rounded half circle hugging it like that. Okay, so then I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill this area here with this light blue, but I want contrast. So what I'm going to do is just add more blue with less water to my brush to make like a more opaque, deeper color, and fill it in underneath and angular and off to the right side here. I'm just going to keep layering that until I like, the depth. And everything is really wet and it bleeds well into each other. And just remember that when it is wet, it's going to be darker, and then when it dries, it'll be lighter. So add maybe more than you might think so that it creates a nice contrast. Okay, so then what I want to do is just want to really kind of get rid of this outline. So I'm going to pull this color up the vase, but I'm going to leave it pretty empty here because using my paper towel, I'm gonna lift some of the color out because if I'm gonna be layering it in some flowers, I don't wanna have to paint flowers over like a really dark base area. Okay, so like that. If you want a little bit more definition, you can go in and just define these lines a little bit more. Okay. I'm just gonna, I don't want it too outline looking, so just gonna lift some of that color out. Okay, so now you have your, like a basic base shape that we're gonna be working with today. So clean your brush out and we're gonna start with our peony. We're gonna have a peony kind of off to the side here. We're gonna start it like over here. So what I wanna do to start is you load your brush up with, I'm using a lighter pink, and always work a little bit lighter and then go darker by adding less water, okay? Let's see here. Just loading my brush and just a little bit off to the right. So I'm gonna make my first larger petal like this, okay? Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill it in really light, right? Using the side of your brush is really helpful when creating larger surface area, painting larger surface area, because if you're just using the tip of your brush, it's gonna take forever. But this helps create nice volume. Using my paper towel, I'm gonna lift out the edge here. But to get a contrast, I wanna add more paint kind of underneath. So what I'm creating is kind of a fold. So this is looking like it's folding or the petal is curving down, right? And at the bottom here, I want a little more contrast because there's going to be more shadow closer to the center. So I'm going to add more color down there as well and kind of let it bleed as it dries. Okay. So now what I want to do is just kind of keep working petals. So start lighter with my pink, using again the side of my brush. We're going to create kind of this half circle moon right here. And I'm going to get in a little bit closer. And then using more pigment, so less watered down, I'm going to add the inside of this petal. Just it's going to be very small amount because it's kind of curling really close to the center here. And fill it in like such. You need to kind of play with your petals as you go, like make them longer or whatnot, do so as they're still wet. I'm going to lift some of this color out here again, just to add some contrast. Like a highlight. Okay. So they look like they're curling. Okay, now loading my brush up. I want to create a longer kind of boat shape here, like a banana a little bit. Okay, and then adding more of this pink, kind of just angling it because this is going to be the interior of this petal here. It's going to be darker. So I'm going to have to lift out a little bit of color on this edging just to get it to pop a little bit more. Yeah. Notice how that really contrasts. And if I want this, so if you want to, again, manipulate the shape, you can just add some water, kind of dab some of it out with your paper towel a little bit. Okay. And now what I want to do is I'm going to create like a smaller shape here. But it's going to be curved. So really use the tip of your brush. Another pointer is, say like you don't want to be working around like an invisible center, is that you can create a really light circle as the center here, like that, to work around. That I find people find that a lot easier once if they're learning. So you could do that to start if you want. Okay, so I'm going to add water to this. Try to get rid of this outline. Again, I do not want this dark outline. Adding some more of this color, darker pink towards the bottom. And do that for these other ones here because I want them to have a lot of shadow towards that base. Okay, so then I'm going to use some water, lighten up the pink, and then create a larger petal behind this one here. Kind of hug it like this. And then I'm going to go in and fill it. And it's okay that I let it touch a little bit. Okay. There we go. You want it to have a little bit more texture, you can add more curves to it while it's still wet, kind of manipulate the shape more. Just try to do it again while it's still wet, because that will help a lot. So you don't have to lift color out. Okay. Just going in and defining that shape a little bit more. Okay. Now what I want to do is kind of keep building on top of this. So I want a darker petal back here. Again, use the tip of your brush to create some curved lines like that. And then we're going to fill it using less water just so that the pigment is deeper, and put it into that crevice there. That way you can kind of show that it's going behind these other petals. I'm just playing with the shape a little more. Okay. And then I'm going to also do another curved shape down here. Use these little opening gaps kind of as little skeletons or like tools of where to fill. Okay. Then using my paper towel, I'm going to lift out this edge because it's right on the end. So you get a lot of highlight right there. And then I'm going to add another one just right here. It's kind of a half moon. Again, using the side of your brush to get that nice width. And then lifting a little bit of the color like that. A little more contrast in here. Okay. I kind of want this one to be a little bit wider, so I'm actually gonna lengthen it a little bit. Add to it a little bit there. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to round this out so it's not so gappy right here. Just pull a little color out there. But I want to create my center and I want it to have a nice flow of water. So I'm going to take my brush with water and add it and kind of lift some of this color out that is along this little inner circle area and go into the circle a little bit. And the reason for this is I'm going to go in with my small brush, okay? And I'm going to add, I need a little bit more contrast here. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more of the darker pink here, right? And I want more dark pink here. And adding in, I just want more contrast. And a little bit here. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm gonna go in with my yellow with my small brush. I'm gonna be using like a golden yellow. If you have a yellow that's like really limey, you can add a little orange to it to warm it up. So start creating tiny dots in the center here. And then as you hit this wet area, you want to pull the lines out. And up. And just keep reloading your brush so you have some good amount of pigment in it. And then do it shorter on the right side because those petals are curving in more. So they're going to be a little bit more squished. Okay, just kind of go in and again, you want to leave white space in the center here. But to add a little bit more definition, I'm going to go in with some pink. You can use the same pink, less watered down, or even like a deeper pink, and just kind of overlap some of that area that you just painted. But using this darker color will help create definition. If you like a really light kind of pastel-y look, you don't have to do this, but this does help define your center more. Okay. So now we have our peony and we can kind of go in if we want. So might add some more water here and then go in with a little more pink just to add some contrast. If you find it's too light, just always go in and add more, but you need to wet the surface first by vibrating it and lifting the color up off the page. That way it just doesn't sit right on top like that. That's how you get a good like bleed. Okay. I'm just kind of messing with some of the petals now to kind of get the color I like. I want one looking like it's coming from behind, but you don't have to. Kind of just what fits with your space that you've already created. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to start creating my dogwoods. So my dogwoods or my white flowers, I'm going to be using gray. If you don't have a light gray, you can either use a very, very light black or you can use like a light blue, or something like this is a light black here, a light blue, even a light yellow. If it were me and if I didn't have a light gray, I would either go with the light yellow and maybe even the light black, but maybe the light, only because it's warmer and kind of matches our picture better. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, using my large brush, go into my gray, and we want it lighter, but I'm going to paint a little bit darker for the sake of you seeing it on camera better, and then lift the color out. Okay, so we're going to start with a one down here. So I'm going to make an open circle. Okay, and then I'm going to create kind of an outline of one going behind like this. I'm going to fill it in, leaving a tiny white gap in between. You're going to have on average like 4 to 5 petals, just depending. And I'm going to create this outline here, helps me create really a texture that I'm looking for. Also use the side of your brush to create maybe like a little bit of a smoother petal. So kind of alternate between the two. Okay, so now what I want to do is take my paper towel and lift out some of these edges. So that way it looks like a lighter flower. And I'm going to keep contrast, so like this deep color underneath, that way it looks like it's being pushed back. Okay. And then go in with a little more gray towards the inner, or the bottom of the petals, just to make sure that you have a nice contrast there. Then using a small brush, I'm going to use like a celadon green, which is more of like a natural green. So more of a green like this. If you don't only have like, say, like more of a blue green, mix in a little bit of yellow to get more of a natural green. I'm going to outline the circle while it's still wet here. Okay. Pull the color out. That way it bleeds into the gray. And then create tiny dots in the center, but leaving white space. So I'm going to keep doing this throughout. So I'm going to put another one over here. Okay. So, and if you get quick enough, you can do several outlines at once, several petals at once. But just make sure that you keep at your own pace. That way you don't let it dry, the outline dry in between filling, because then it'll be much more difficult to get them out, or like raise out the outline, because you just don't want it to be flat. Okay, then taking your paper towel, lift some of these edges. Because this one is underneath, I'm going to keep it a little bit darker there. Then going in with my celadon, outlining, pulling it out into the gray, and then little dots in the center. If the gray is going too far, just lift some of it, or sorry, if the green's going too far, lift some of it out with your brush, or use your paper towel to dab it out. Okay, going back to my big brush in the gray. Okay, what I'm going to do now is add 2 up here. So I'm going to add 1 right here, and then kind of 1 down here really close next to it, like that. Trying to see if yeah, okay. So creating my outline. You just don't want these petals to be so perfect. You want them to be really, really like buried in their shapes, but you still want to create a balance. Going in with my celadon. Little dots in the center. Okay. And then you can use your paper towel and kind of lift some of the edges out. Okay. So this one here is going to overlap a little bit. So be underneath like that. Again, I'm painting darker for the sake of you being able to see. So normally I'd paint lighter and then add the depth as I needed it, but I just want you to be able to see because the camera won't pick it up if I do it too light. Really try to get rid of the outline. Blend it in. And then this area under here, you can make it a little darker just because it is being layered underneath. And then you can add some contrast. I'm gonna lift some of that right there because I don't want it bleeding into that petal too much or it eats it. Okay, and I'm gonna lift some of that here. So you notice I still see that outline on the top there. Really need to rub it out. And that's just because I created my outline too dark. So I'm going to be more careful next time to just go a little bit lighter. Okay. Then using your small brush, go into your green, do your circle, and then pull out tiny dots. Okay. Okay. So here you can kind of see underneath, right? I'm going to try to lift some more of that color out. That way you don't see that base underneath. Just using water. And that's why I went so light here. Because if I went super dark, it would be a lot harder for me to try to lift that out. Okay. So now what we want to do is I'm going to go in and, well, I'm going to continue. Okay, that one spread. So I'm going to lift some of it out so it's not so far. And I'm going to continue my dogwood. Okay, so I'm going to create one over here coming from behind. Let's just absorb that. I have to work a little lighter because I just don't want to have to keep going in and dealing with the outline. Okay. Okay. And then so this is the center here, so you can see it better. And then this one I'm going to have hiding more underneath. And then adding a few more petals. Here. I'm just really messing with the shape now, just to get what I like. Try to sneak in like a small one on the left side here, but I have to lift out some of it so it's not so funky looking. Okay, lifting out some of the edges, and then using my green on my small brush, I'm gonna pull out the green a little bit, and then little dots in the center. And it kind of does the work for you as it bleeds. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is create one that's here that's going to actually need to go further out. This one's going to overlap the peony, so I'm going to have it so that it goes on top of it. So we're going to have to get some of that pink out. And, you know, we're going to end up with different things just depending on like what size we make things. Okay, so go in and quickly fill. And then I'm going to just quickly fill these first before I mess with the one that's overlapping the pink. And I'm going to just vibrate that over, back and forth over the surface where the pink hits. Okay. Lift some of the edgings and then add some contrast to the center. Using my green with my small brush. And then tiny dots. Okay, I want to then create one kind of overlapping. So I'm going to create a circle that's closer here, like that. And then have this one kind of coming from behind. Actually, I'm going to pull my circle down a little bit more. So I'm going to pull it down here. That way this petal can be up higher and kind of hugging underneath like that. You can change your mind, see? And using tip of your brush, just really go in. Okay. So I'm going to add more contrast here. So it's like hugging underneath this petal. So it looks like it's coming from behind. And same with this one here. So a little more contrast here. And then using my paper towel, I'm going to lift some of this color out. Okay. Then let's use our green. Okay, and I'm going to create one more kind of down farther here in this grouping. How about like right here? I'm going to make this petal actually pretty large. Like it's basically a little bit behind this one. Right? And then fill. So this flower is pretty forgiving. Just make sure you create texture with the tip of your brush or even just the side of your brush. So for example, using the side of my brush to create a petal as well. Just kind of go in and out to create curves as you see fit. But texture is just really important. And having one come out here. Okay, and then lifting a little bit of that color out, especially along the edges. Okay. So now I want a few down here just to kind of create a balance. So I'm going to do one here. Okay. And then a smaller one like underneath it. And you can always add more after you've say added more flowers or like the other elements. And if you see that like, hey, I want to add a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that, always feel free to keep adding where you see it needs more of something. Okay. This one, I don't know. I'm going to wait until I create my stem and then create a tiny one off of the stem. Okay, now I want to do is create the lilacs. So the lilacs are going to be just the bunching. You're going to use a light purple and basically create tiny kind of bunchings of flowers. So you're basically creating small open face flowers kind of bunched together. Because we're creating really loose flowers. And then we're going to go in and add some rose in there, like some pink, some darker purple, just to give contrast. So really going to be using the tip of our brush here. You find that it's more simple to use your smaller brush for this, go for it, but you're going to have to reload your brush over and over and over. At least if you use your big brush, you can get a pretty big distance without having to keep reloading. Okay, so I'm going to start with a light purple. If you don't have like a lilac color, you can use just more water in your purple to lighten it up. So for example, so like this is more of a violet, and if you add more water, this is kind of what you get here. Also, say you don't have a purple, what I've done here is I've actually mixed some blue with some red to get more of like a mauvey purple, which that will do as well, okay? So work with what you have. Okay, so what I'm gonna do to start is I'm gonna create a small grouping right underneath here. Again, just small clumps, leaving some white gap in between. Using the tip of your brush, kind of going round in a circular motion. Okay. And have it kind of hug into this dogwood here. I'm going to be using my small brush to add contrast, and then, so what I'm going to go in is with my darker purple with my small brush, or violet, add it towards the top where it's kind of coming out from under this peony here. Okay. And then I like to scatter some of that depth throughout while it's still wet. So anytime you have like something hiding or in the shadow, like you want to make it a little bit darker. That way it looks like it's just coming out from behind. When something's more on an edge, then you want to lighten it. So like you can use your paper towel and like lighten up the color a little bit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is grab some of my pink, it's like a rose pink, and just add it into select areas while it's still wet. Again, just to create another dimension. Okay, going back to my light purple, I'm going to create a grouping over here. Tiny brush strokes using my larger brush. So forgiving, which I love. It's like hard to mess up. You just need to get like a nice shape, really. But the actual movement is very forgiving. Okay. So this part is more relaxing, like less to say, just because we're doing the same moment over and over again. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go in with my little brush with some of that deep purple and add it underneath the peony, and then add it in certain areas. Or sorry, not the peony, the lilac. To give it some contrast. And if it bleeds too much, like you don't like, just dab some of it out. I'm going to go in with some more pink. This really adds depth here. Okay. Again, at any time you see like another part of your painting needs a little help, just go in and rescue it. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to add one more grouping right here. So it's going to hug like underneath. So going back to my brush, larger brush, it's going to be up against it more. And I'm going to add like more water to my brush to get the lighter purples when I want it. And to make sure that I can separate these two out, I'm going to make sure I add a good amount of depth on the bottom here, like in between, which you'll see how I do that with a small brush. And like when I want it to droop more, I like just create like a long line kind of overlapping like that. It's always fun, kind of making it look like it's a little droopy. Mm-hmm. So now going in with your small brush, dark purple, I'm going to add it in along this edge here to be like, hey, I'm a different grouping and I'm separate. And that really helps. And then again to the top, like we normally do here, kind of underneath this dogwood. And then in just a few areas like that. Then going into your pink and then adding that throughout. And just look how it just goes its own way. And that only happens because this bottom layer is still wet. If it was dry, it wouldn't do that. And that's working wet on wet. And I'm gonna lift some of it out because I want a little bit more definition in there. So I'm gonna go back in just with my lighter purple and define that area a little bit more. If it gets a little too muddy, you can always lift that color and go back and define it more. And I definitely want this color to come down a little farther so it's not on the same line as this one. Adding more contrast with the darker purple. Okay. Okay. Now what I want to do, just keep trying to create a little more definition. This one got a little bit muddier than I wanted it to. And that happens. Okay, now I'm going to add just like a short one coming up here. So hugging underneath. Like that. And then having it just build up, but not too far up. We still want a little space where you can see a stem once we put it in for the dogwood. Composition is a whole animal in itself, creating something, the actual piece, and where things go. I think that's a skill of its own. It takes a lot of time, so be patient with yourself. Especially if you're trying something different and new and not like copying from a paper. Okay, I'm gonna go in with my dark purple, kind of add some definition down in the crevices. Okay, and a little pink. Okay, I like that. And so let's just make our way around, going back to our light purple. Gonna have a little bit hugging just around this dogwood here. Again, not too much. It's going to be like behind, like it's just coming through. Really using the tip of my brush to create some shapes here. And having it kind of hug underneath a little bit, like that. And just a little like that. Okay. So going in with my dark purple into these crevices again. Right down here, just a little bit more depth. And just a little in here. Gonna add a little pink. As I'm more towards the top, I have a tendency of being a little bit lighter. Down here, there's more shadow, so I put a little more depth in it. But up here, it's like, you can see it's a little bit lighter. Just because of more light can hit it, more highlight, things like that. Okay. Now I'm gonna add some in these little parts here. Just little mini florals kind of stacked up on top of each other. Nice. Okay. Keep adding. Okay. A little lighter on the edge here to make it like a little fluffier. And then go in with some of your dark purple along the inner corners like this. Okay. Yeah, I like that. It's looking good, you guys. And if you wanted to even add like really light purple kind of here to hug it, do you like that? Yeah, I think that's nice. And then going with your pink and just add it randomly, kind of throughout. Nice. Okay. Again, sometimes I go into my paper towel and then I lift some color out just to get like random highlights within the bunching. And then it kind of gives you the opportunity to kind of go back in if you need to maybe add more definition or just like a different color layering if you want that. Okay. I want a little more depth here. I'm just going to add in a little bit of the dark purple. Just build your layers out. I like them to be lighter on the edges, like I said. So I'm just going to go a little bit lighter here, a little more water. And if it gets a little dark, just use your paper towel and dab it out. Okay. So now I'm going to add one that's drooping down here because I think that'll be a nice contrast. So let's create a droop. So kind of gives me an idea. Sometimes I create like a dotted line like this to kind of give myself a form so I know where I'm going. And the reason we start lighter with this lighter purple is just so that we can go back in and create those layers with the deeper colors for more depth. If you start out too dark, you're not going to have that ability and it's going to look flat. If you do end up having a really dark color to start, you can dab it out with your paper towel, re-wet it, kind of vibrate it out with your brush. Notice these little droops. Remember, just using the real tip of your brush, pull them down, kind of like a grapevine a little bit, right? And I'm going to slowly pull out some of this color on the side. Okay. Just want it to be some random petals, like kind of falling out. Hugging underneath. And then now I'm going to take my small brush, go in with my deep purple and start creating some contrast in some of these crevices here. Just ever so slight. Okay. And just add them in. And have some of them look underneath a little bit, where like less light would be able to hit, like that. Okay. Now what I want to do is go in with a little pink and then just add those kind of blocks of color in randomly. If you even want more droops, you can go in and I want it to be on a different line. So notice how they're lining up here. I'm going to pull this one down even farther because I want it to be on a different plane. Okay. But I want to make sure that it doesn't get too far, much farther than your vase. Otherwise, technically, unless it's off of a table, it would be hitting the table. So just for the sake of this picture, maybe it's not super realistic. So you can lift it out like this if you need to. Okay. And then I like to just use water on my small brush sometimes and pull out color that I've already made just to get a really light color to make it really whimsical. I think I'm going to do some of that up here, kind of into this gap a little bit. Add a little more dark purple there. Okay. I'm going to pull that in for definition. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Celadon green. If you want, like I like to, for my stems, use like a lighter color for things like this. I don't want them like too dark because I feel like your eye goes straight to them and I don't want that. So I want it just to be more lighter. So I'm going to use the same green that I used for the middles here. You want to mix them in with like some raw sienna, or if you want to use that instead, like a lighter yellow, you can do that. But I don't suggest using like a really dark color. Okay, so I'm going to create, just like, make sure you create like some bumpy lines in your stems. Okay, like that. And remember how I said I was going to make a small stem coming off and creating a really small dogwood there. And then I can create a stem kind of coming out like that. They're not as visible, so I'm not as worried about it. And I don't like them to touch because it kind of just gives it that gap that it needs so that things don't blend into each other too much. It gives it that like like a definition, like separation and stuff. Okay, and I notice I have a gap here. I need to figure out. I could fill it with purple, which I probably should, or I could create a stem. I think I'll just fill it with a really light purple. Let's see. That. Okay. And then you can use your paper towel to kind of lift it out a little bit. If you want more depth with it, let me see what it looks like, because I can always lift it out if I don't like it. Adding a darker purple in there. Do I mind it? I don't know. I'm gonna lift some of it out. I don't know that I like that. I think I might just like create, let's see. I could create leaves, but we're not gonna be doing leaves on these. Let me see if I create a stem. Oh, that's too defined too. See, sometimes you like things and sometimes you don't. So just lift it out. So what I'm gonna do here is I might just go in and add like, I could extend the peony with like a light pink. Do we like that? I don't like that either. So I think I'm just gonna add it with that purple. Okay, but I want to define what I just kind of lifted, so. Let me go in and add a little definition here along that. And maybe this will help, like underneath. If you didn't have like a big gap like that, then you don't have to worry about that. I had a bigger gap than I wanted, so I just have to fill it so it doesn't look odd. And what I can do also is go with some more gray and actually define this a little bit more. This little petal here. How much more? Let's see. Just creating some definition. Okay, and then what I'll do is with some purple, just go in and add tiny separation in there. Yeah, I like that because then it helps separate out the two, but it's not too jarring with like a really dark purple. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's go back to our celadon. So small brush, celadon, let's create some more stems. So make sure I don't put my hand in what I just did. I'm gonna create and then have a stem kind of coming off here like that. And then this stem from this one, you can have it kind of coming down like that. If I wanted to, I might even pull some of this purple up a little bit. I could add like a third or another flower there too if I wanted. Decisions, you guys. I'm gonna thicken the stem just a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna grab some light purple on my brush and kind of see if I like that. Like, kind of want it to be like that a little bit, right? I like that there's a slight gap here, like that. Maybe I just wanted this to come up a little bit higher. Maybe out a little more. Here. That, yeah, I think I like that. Maybe pull, this is like, you notice how it's like a straight line here? I kind of want to fluff it out a little, so it's kind of comes out a little bit more like that. Okay. Do I want to add another dogwood there? Like maybe a really tiny one. That's good. Yeah, maybe tiny, using my tiny brush. Will you make a tiny one here? Tiny, okay. Small, very small. And there we go. There we go. Okay. And I'm gonna lift some of that out so it's not so dark. Okay. And then using your green outline dots. Nice. Yeah. Okay. Oh, what a gem. Okay, so now we have, I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to add. Oh wait, I was going to add one down here. That's right. I'm going to add another small one down here. Okay, just adding some water to what I just painted. That way I can lift out the edges a little bit. It's not so dark. And then go in with your green and dots. Nice. Okay. Trying to think if there's anything else. I could have like a little more purple peeking through. Let me see if I like it. Or maybe more purple kind of coming out here. The thing is, when you have so much going on, you got to be aware that like you can have gaps. You can have things like where it doesn't have to be full. You know what I mean? And as an artist myself, like I have a tendency of just like filling. And I'm working better on leaving gaps. So, okay, you guys. So now we have our painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. And you learned something, had fun, most importantly, had fun with it. And I hope that you paint with me again. And I just want to show you or tell you that I have 4 workshops coming up this spring season. So they're going to be in place of my Kits of the Month for March and April. March, I'm doing a workshop. Well, basically, I'm doing workshops that are international, and we're going to be painting botanicals based on different regions in the world. And we're going to start, we have Italy, we have France, we have Japan, and we also have Greece. So I'm really excited about it. You're going to have the option of getting the kit, which will be really fun, or you'll also have the option of just buying a ticket and using your own paints. It won't come with anything. It will just come with the lesson, like the learning. So you'll just from the video that we do together. So I hope you guys join me this spring for a watercolor workshop. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a lovely, lovely day.